to our webinar today, hosted by OHS Canada and sponsored by our partners at Avetta. I'm Todd Humber, the Senior Editor for OHS Canada. We are thrilled to have you all here today to discuss an important topic in the construction sector, repetitive strain injuries, also known as RSIs. As we all know, RSIs can have a significant impact on a worker's health and well-being, and they can also lead to lost productivity and increased costs for employers. In the construction industry, where physical labor is often a key component of the work, preventing RSIs is of utmost importance. We are fortunate today to be joined by Colin Creaser, an OHS advisor with Construction Safety Nova Scotia, assisting companies obtain their core certification through safety program auditing, as well as delivering various safety training. Excuse me, but before I turn things over to Colin, a couple of quick housekeeping items. You, the audience, are in listen-only mode. We can't hear or see you, but that doesn't mean we don't want to hear from you. We've got some time today at the end of Colin's presentation for a Q&A session, so I encourage you to enter your questions at any time in the Q&A box, which you can find in your Zoom webinar control panel. As an FYI, today's session is also being recorded. You'll receive a link to the recording to view at your leisure within about 24 hours. So without further ado, let's dive in and learn more about how we can all work together to promote a safe and healthy work environment for construction workers across the country. Colin, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Todd, and thank you everybody for joining us today. So as Todd mentioned, my name is Colin Creaser. I am an occupational health and safety advisor with Construction Safety Nova Scotia. And we're going to talk about some repetitive strain injuries today and just generating some awareness and better ways to mitigate it in our workplaces and workforces. So thank you very much for the introduction there about construction safety, Todd. So again, we are the Construction Safety Association of Nova Scotia. It is an industry-funded, not-for-profit association focusing on improving occupational health and safety in the construction sector. As mentioned, we help facilitate companies obtain their core, their certificate of recognition. We do that through safety management system auditing, delivering training, and also mentoring and consultation when and where needed. I'll leave this slide up just for a quick minute here. So a couple different ways to connect with us and our association. So we do have a 1-800 number. We also have our local line. We are in Halifax, Nova Scotia. So our local line is 902-468-6696. We also have our email address there, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and our website as well. Our communications and engagement team hits the ground running with any type of new initiatives or campaigns or projects they're working on. So always take a look at our LinkedIn, our Instagram, and any of our resources there. There's always something new up and coming, lots of information available for you. So what are we going to look at today? We are going to talk about repetitive strain injuries. So we're going to look at what are RSIs, why we're going to focus on them. We're going to look at common body parts that are injured. We'll look at some key and contributing factors. We'll talk about some steps towards the reduction of repetitive strain injuries. We have a few practical controls, a few examples of things that we can see out in the workforce and ways to control them. Some recommended training or some mindfulness of things that we want to be getting trained on or what's going to be included in our training. A few steps towards effective program management and some resources that are available through different organizations and ourselves as well. So this is why we are here. What are repetitive strain injuries or RSIs? We've all heard MSIs before, multiple skeletal injuries. So these are somewhat interchangeable. Repetitive strain injuries themselves are one of the most common workplace injuries. We're looking at about an average of more than 6% of claims that require time off work are caused by musculoskeletal injuries, repetitive strain injuries. Symptoms can include pain, as mentioned, stiffness, weakness, numbness, muscle cramps, swelling of the joints, general discomfort. I mean, this isn't an extensive list here. There are several issues as well. Some of the more diagnosable ones are going to be carpal tunnel, tendonitis, inflammation, the list can go on. So you do have an increased risk of these injuries if you carry heavy loads, work on your knees, twist your hands or wrists often, stretch to work overhead, or use certain types of tools. Again, this isn't the exhaustive list, just a few examples, but this is generally every day in the life of a construction worker and anybody really in a physically demanding a job. The nice thing is that these injuries are preventable. So getting ahead of these injuries is, of course, our end goal. With awareness, commitment, appropriate procedures, everyone can help eliminate or reduce the risk of employees getting injured on the job. In the construction industry, a lot of our repetitive tasks are assembly work, hand tool, power tool usage, cutting, sawing, manual material lifting, plumbing, mechanical work, erecting, dismantling scaffold, really a lot. Again, anything that I'm kind of discussing today is not going to be an exhausted list. There are a lot of contributing factors that we're going to talk about a little bit today. So why focus on repetitive strain injuries? Let's take a look at some costs. Usually our main driving factors for things in the industry here. So our average claim costs, now this is a claim per injury, is $3,394, so just shy of $3,400. These costs are including our medical costs, our prescriptions, physical therapy, occupational therapy, anything that's involved in the medical kind of costing of the injury and the claim. As well, we see an average time loss claim cost that jumps up quite significantly to $7,670.41. Excuse me there. So as we can see, the average time loss claim does jump up quite significantly. So our average claim cost is our direct cost. Our average time loss claim can be considered our indirect cost. We often call this the iceberg effect in safety, where the iceberg on top of the water is a lot smaller than what's under the water. And under the water is our indirect costs. These are going to include retraining, overtime, if there's any type of gaps in the workforce there with an injured worker, any of the administrative side to it, production loss, anything that's going to be an after effect of our employee or of our worker not being on the site. On the right side of the screen there, we see some more of the common causes. So overexertion coming in at 30% of the claims. These are going to happen when our work tasks essentially have a higher demand than what our physical body is able to put out. Humans we're a very fascinating species. We can put a lot of work out there, but at the end of the day, our body has its limits, and we do have to respect that and understand that we eventually will break down if we're not taking care of ourselves. Some of that breakdown we can see in the bodily reaction at 26% of claims. These are going to be more of those carpal tunnel issues, tendonitis issues, inflammation in different joints and areas. Again, not a fully exhausted list, but there are a lot of diagnosable issues out there that are results of repetitive strain injuries and our musculoskeletal injuries. As well, on average, we're looking at about 10.5 weeks of lost time work per claim. Doing a little quick mental math, that's just shy of about 3 months. That's a long time to have an employee off work. It's a long time to have a missing member of your workforce. And that's why we want to put a priority on this and start creating some awareness that there are some preventable measures that we can put in place to try to mitigate the hazards to ourselves and also cut down on some of this lost time work, eliminate it altogether, of course, if we can. We'll take a look at some of the common body parts that are being injured and that the claims are coming in through. So our neck and our shoulders. This can be from looking, reaching, holding objects above our head for a long period of time. Just yesterday, myself and my supervisor were doing training with a practical scaffolding course. So as we're supervising the students, the workers building the scaffolding, when they're up to their second, third tier, they're 10, 15 feet up in the air. So you're looking like this to supervise for extended periods of time. So what's important is to keep in mind, just stop for a second, kind of flex that neck out a little bit, just relax yourself, and then of course, get back up to your supervising responsibilities. With our back, that can be from constant twisting, bending, stretching motions, usually from picking up or setting down heavy objects. So moving forward, we also see wrists and forearms are quite common. So that could be from grabbing, twisting to install fixtures, perform repairs. I think about sometimes a plumber or any mechanical work being done in a tight area that you're kind of reaching and twisting to try to get that fixture on, replace that screw or that nut or the bolt or anything like that. We also see injuries with hands and fingers. So vibrations from drills, jackhammers, nail guns, any of that delicate work that I was kind of just referencing to using screws or trying to really do those fine-tuned bits and bobs there. As well, we see our legs and knees being injured. So that's going to happen sometimes from traveling up and down stairs, crouching or kneeling positions, of course, slips and trips. Along with that, we also see ankles and feet. So some of these can be from excessive walking on uneven surfaces, sometimes improper footwear, and again, slips and trips. What's really important to remember about these body parts that can be injured is that if there's any type of pre-existing injury, let's say a sprained ankle from a sports injury, let's say any injury from an unfortunate workplace incident, it's very easy to reignite that pain or re-injure that body part because of the pre-existing injury. Myself, I've sprained my left ankle twice, and it is the first thing to go with me, first thing to start giving me any type of problem or pain. If I kind of overwork it, or if I do have a little bit of a slip or something like that, it's always going to be the first thing that I feel. So keeping in mind that if there are any pre-existing injuries, pre-existing issues, they're going to be easily affected with some of these repetitive strains, repetitive motions that we're doing. We'll take a quick look at a few more numbers here. So these are going to be our leading injury areas. I'm going to venture a pretty strong guess that most industries, our back is going to be our leading claim cause. So back injuries currently are sitting at 30% of claims, 16% being legs, 14% being our shoulders, and 11% being our ankles. We're going to talk about program management a little further into the presentation. I wanted to highlight some of the statistical information as we need to look at these numbers when we are working on our program development, working on our areas of concern, things we want to be focusing on. Essentially, every job and every site, of course, is going to be different, but this information is going to help us recognize our problem areas, our incidence rates, right? So, I mean, back is an easy example, but let's say legs. Let's say that in January, we have a significant amount of issues going on, claims going on with leg injuries or leg strains and knees, all that stuff included. We have to take a look at what's going on in January that were affecting our workforce's legs, right? So these numbers are important to take a look at when we are developing a little bit further into our control measures, our hazard assessments, and our program development. So what are some of the factors in repetitive strain injuries? When we are identifying our hazards and we are reviewing our job tasks, we want to keep a focus on these key factors. So they are forceful exertions. How much energy are we actually putting into the task we're doing? How much energy are we applying to the tool or to the material that we're using? Power tools are designed for a reason. They're there to take some of that manual effort out of it. We look at awkward or sustained postures. Again, I mentioned kind of the plumber tucked into the tight under the sink corner or something like that, right? How long are we in these positions? How often are we in these positions? Kneeling. A lot of construction work is going to be done while we're kneeling or in lower positions. So if we're doing that 4 or 5 days out of the week, right, we're looking at how often, how long we're staying in these positions. Lastly, we also have frequency and duration of the task. So kind of just alluded to that a little bit with the positioning there. How often are we performing these tasks? How long are we doing the tasks for? Going back to the scaffolding course, right? When you're standing up, supervising the workers for 10, 15 minutes straight, right? And you're kind of straining your neck a little bit. How long are we doing that for? So we have to keep these things in mind when we're developing our hazard assessments or we are focusing on our job tasks, our safe work procedures, and that. So again, not a fully extensive list, but I wanted to highlight a couple of the things that we do on a regular basis that can be contributing factors to our repetitive strain injuries and our musculoskeletal injuries. So some of those are going to be gripping, kneeling, lifting, bending. This photo is a great example of an awkward position or kind of an awkward bend. As well, we look at overextending, twisting, tool vibration, and squatting. So it's important to remember that controls like the right tool for the job and break periods will assist in a long and meaningful work experience. A few contributing factors we want to look at today are going to be tool use, repetitive motion, awkward positioning, and manual material handling. So we also have 6 steps to prevention. Now, this has been developed by the Workers' Compensation Board. We do try to work very closely with them in all aspects of what we do. We do have a great partnership with them. So these steps, this doesn't just strictly have to be about repetitive strain injuries. These steps can be utilized in all your program developments, in all your hazard awareness and assessments as well. So we'll just go through them here quickly. So the very first step is going to be education and awareness. So we want to educate our employees about risks and the signs and symptoms of injury. We also want to identify our risks. So we're identifying the jobs, the tasks, the work locations that pose a higher risk of injury. Risk assessment. So we're assessing these risks. So we're not just identifying them, we're assessing their priorities and how they're affecting us. To kind of highlight back to our back injuries being one of the leading causes, that should be a priority to us, right? Now, again, every job site is going to be different. I do appreciate that. So we want to take a look, what is getting injured or what is getting claimed the most? That should take a priority, right? Now, that being said, I don't want to undermine our other issues or our other injuries, but we can't take it all at once. So let's get the most important ones out of the way first and continue on our implementation throughout our programs. Talking of implementation, looking at some controls. We want to work with employees to develop controls that can eliminate or reduce the work factors. I'm going to talk a lot today about that communication with the employees. I think it's one of the more vital and important steps in any program management. They are the ones who are performing the tasks. They're going to know best what is injuring them or what is making them discomfortable, right? As well as training. So as we implement these controls, as we might have changed procedures or grabbed a hold of some new PPE that came down, anything, we need to train our workforce on how to use them properly and safely. So with training, as I said, we want to ensure employees can safely use these control measures with new procedures or new equipment that we've had. Lastly, and this is another very important one, is the evaluation, the last step, the evaluation. So we need to provide ongoing evaluation of new control measures, new training, new equipment. Once we set up our program, once we set up our controls, it's not just done there, right? We need to make sure that we're evaluating, we're measuring the effectiveness of what we're doing. Unfortunately, I do see quite a bit that the evaluation side might not be as strong as some of the others, and I think it needs to be considered just as much. So the best way, of course, to keep our employees safe is to engage them in all of our safety initiatives, with everyone working together to identify the hazards and reduce the risks. The efforts to improve safety are going to become more effective and more sustainable. So this 6-step list, it is a great guide, as I said, to help develop any safety management program, and can be used specifically for your repetitive strain injuries and the prevention to them. So we can't have a safety presentation without talking about hierarchy of controls. So we'll just do a quick little skim over of those before we get into some more of our practical controls of some things we see out on the work sites. So with the hierarchy of controls, our first step and our best step is going to be elimination. Can we eliminate the hazard altogether? Next is going to be substitution. Can we substitute that tool? Can we substitute the equipment, the material that we're using for something that might be a little less hazardous? Next is engineering. Are we able to design or build the hazard out of it altogether? This can be guardrails. guards on the tools themselves, building temporary platforms, work platforms that might be able to bring that equipment a little bit closer to ourselves, right? Administrative controls, often called the paperwork, but this can be our scheduling, our job rotations, safe work practices, safe work procedures. Lastly is going to be our PPE, so our last line of defense. Unfortunately, if all else fails, PPE is designed there to protect us in that case, right? So as I mentioned, eliminating the hazard altogether, of course, is going to be the best step, but it might not always be, you might not always be able to do that on every job site. So finding the solution that works for you and your organization is paramount and going to be key in the prevention and mitigation of any risk or hazard, specifically RSIs, what we're talking about today. So getting into a little bit more detail, when we are using our tools, we want to choose tools that can be used with the wrist straight. We're trying to avoid a lot of the bending and twisting. Now, again, I know it's going to happen. So there's any way that we can choose tools to mitigate that at all, it's going to be beneficial. If we can provide options for workers to use tools safely, no matter what their dominant hand is as well. And we want to inspect tools regularly. We want to ensure that worn or damaged tools are fixed and replaced. We were talking about the forceful exertions, right? So we can imagine if we have a dull chisel, dull saw blade, anything that we have to put that much extra force in to get the tool to do what we're trying to get it to do. We don't want the tool to become a hazard among itself, right? Also, we could think about maybe a stripped screw. The amount of effort you have to put into to get the friction, to get that screw to turn, right? That's our fingers, that's our hands, that's our wrists, our forearms, our elbows. It's going all the way up. So you can just, again, imagine how sometimes you're putting your whole body weight into that screw, into that screwdriver to get it to actually grip. So this is where we want to maintain all of our equipment for efficiency. Looking at tool vibration. So if we can choose tools with vibration reducing features as well, that's going to be very beneficial to our workforce. If we can provide rubber or sponge type grips on our tool handles, that will help mitigate the vibration that's, again, coming into our fingers, into our hands, traveling further up our forearms. Kind of just alluded to this a little bit, but replacing blades, drill bits, other parts frequently to maintain their efficiency. Again, the tools are working for us. We're not working for the tools, right? We need to make sure that they are efficient and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. As well, we want to ensure the handle of a tool does not create pressure points in the palm of the hand. Several years ago, I had an acquaintance, a friend of mine will say, and he was doing some jackhammering for quite a significant amount of time, and he had open sores on the palm of his hands from gripping the jackhammer for so long. So these things are happening, they are common, and there are ways to mitigate them in that. So that's why we want to kind of talk about some awareness today. Think about some ways that we can help mitigate some of these issues that are happening out there. As well, we're going to look at repetitive motion. So if we're able to rotate the job tasks and or the employees performing them, this is one of the administration controls I was kind of hinting at earlier, right? If we can schedule in job task rotations, when we are looking at the frequency, looking at the duration of the tasks we're doing, are we able to mitigate, shorten some of those timeframes down for the workers who are performing them? We also want to allow for appropriate rest periods and work stretch breaks. And when I say work stretch breaks, of course, we're not stretching for a marathon. We're not stretching for professional sports. We don't want our stretching to become a hazard amongst itself as well. This can be something just as simple as just taking a break, shaking it out a little bit. I don't mean to keep mentioning it, but the scaffolding, right? When you're looking up for a significant amount of time, giving yourself a bit of a break with the strain on the neck there, shaking out the legs, just keeping yourself kind of warmed up and loose while we are performing our job tasks. As well, if we're able to adjust the work area or processes to reduce repetitive tasks. Again, not always going to work in every situation, but if we can bring our materials and our workplaces closer to us, we shouldn't be going down multiple flights of stairs every time we need to grab a piece of equipment or a new material, right? Looking at some awkward postures. So as I kind of mentioned a little bit, we want to store materials close to us. Now this is going to be a little bit different here on this side, but we're storing materials between the knee and the shoulder height. We kind of looked at the picture there earlier with some of the contributing factors, the gentleman that's kind of bending over in that bit of an awkward position. So we can build a permanent or temporary work surfaces to bring the work up off the ground. This can be as simple as a couple pallets maybe in your storage area that just bring that material a bit closer to you, so we're not extending our back so much, bending over and picking things up. Any mechanical devices, using carts, hand trucks, lifting equipment to avoid those awkward lifts and those carries. As well, if and when applicable, we want to use adjustable tools to avoid awkward wrist or hand positions. We also have manual material handling, So carrying our heavy loads, right? So if we're able to reduce the weight with lighter loads or doing team lifts, if we're able to use any mechanical or synthetic lifting devices, davit arms, gin wheels, ropes, anything that we can avoid specifically lifting heavy objects high above our shoulders or our head height. As well, appropriate containers or carrying devices with handles, trying to avoid the significant bundles of wood or other type of equipment, right? If there's any way we can carry those a little bit more appropriately. As well, ensuring that the pathway is clear and there are no obstructions. I just want to make a note of those. If we are carrying something a bit heavier, and sometimes a quick sudden stop, if there's something in our way or something passing us, can have some detrimental effects internally to our bodies, right? As well, keeping materials close to reduce travel and steps. That's what I was hinting at a little bit earlier, where we shouldn't be going down or up multiple flights of stairs to grab our tools and grab our equipment. Again, I understand that that's not always going to be the situation in every situation, every work site. Again, just things that we can do to help try to mitigate some of the steps we're taking, some of the excessive travel we need to do on the work site sometimes. With our controls, I think it's very important to always take a look proactively, but also reactively. So with our proactive side, we want to seek worker comments, feedbacks, and concerns. As I kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, our workforce, they're the people who are performing the tasks. We need to get the buy-in from them. They're the ones who perform the tasks. They're the ones who know what's the hardest for them, what's the most difficult for them, where they may be having issues, right? So looking for that feedback, looking for those comments or those concerns, that's how we're going to get ahead of some of these issues, how we're going to be able to put in some preventative measures. We also want to include repetitive strain hazards during our workplace inspections. And if we have the ability to use a repetitive strain injury hazard identification tool, later into the presentation here, we do have a couple resources that you can find. Anything's worth a Google, but always just double check what you're looking at there on Google, of course. On the reactive side, we want to review our lost time claims, review our accident incident investigation reports, and review our discomfort surveys and or reports of concern. So the discomfort survey, they can kind of work into the proactive side as well. When we are looking for our worker comments, feedbacks, concerns, these discomfort surveys are great that they will actually give you the ability to kind of highlight some of the root causes that might be applying these injuries to our workforce. All in all, workplace safety needs trust and it needs commitment for success. So communication through these programs, interactions with our workforce and our senior management, that's how we're going to get our buy-in. That's how we're going to get our contributions towards improving our safety management systems. So having collaborative conversations and sharing information is going to increase employee engagement and make it easier to build a strong safety culture within your organization. We're going to take a quick look at some training recommendations. Now, when I say recommendations, these aren't particular training courses that I'm recommending. Things to be mindful of when we are looking at training courses or when we are developing in-house training, especially if we are implementing new controls, new equipment, new PPE, anything like that. So again, after our controls are identified, we do need to train our employees on how to use them before we can implement them. We don't want our controls becoming a hazard as well, right? So all of our employees when we are developing training or looking into our training, should have education on the hazards and the risks that are identified. We also want to have training and awareness on the proper use of equipment, safe work procedures, as well as any applicable or required PPE. My friend with the palm source, right? Prime example right there. As well, when we look at our supervisors, our JOSH committee, anyone who has a little bit more hands-on with the program development, some of the training we want to be aware of is program development. Now that can be our whole safety program. It can be individual components of it, maybe specifically ergonomics and our RSI concerns. We also want to be aware of hazard identification, proper techniques for inspections, control applications, and maintenance schedules. You know, again, keeping all of our equipment working efficiently is going to be a very large prevention measure for us. Prevention measures, speaking of, applicable and required PPE and change management. Now, this doesn't mean getting rid of the boss. This doesn't mean changing the whole management team. What this means is, how are we going to implement the changes that we are making? How are we going to manage the changes that we're making? I kind of talked a little bit earlier about that evaluation process, right? How are we implementing the change? How are we managing the change? And how are we evaluating that these changes are effective or maybe not effective? If they're not effective, it is important to address that and correct it in a timely manner, of course. I want to talk a little bit about some effective program management steps. So again, not an exhaustive list, but just some things to really highlight ways to make an efficient and effective program management. So employers must commit time, personnel, and resources to the program management. Someone authorized to make decisions and institute change. Active employer involvement in the hazard identification. Assist them to research and obtain applicable equipment. I'm always impressed with new PPE, new equipment that's coming out. There is always something new coming out. Now, sometimes that does come with a price tag, but that's why it's important to do that market research, develop different ways to obtain new equipment that might be beneficial to you and your organization. As well, we want to felicitate. We want to make sure that we can get medical care for our injured workers. Sorry there, I'm having a hard time saying that one. So the facilitation of medical care for our injured workers. So again, we need to take care of our workforce, bottom line. So how are we helping them if they are injured in the unfortunate event that something like that can happen? As well, I keep saying it, but we need that regular evaluation of the program effectiveness. We can't just say, here's our control, okay, go. We need to make sure that this control is working. And if it isn't working, we need to make sure that we develop ways to ensure that it is, or to improve it. Now, that being said, there are also different ways to help make this successful as well. So I want to talk a little bit about analyzing the frequency and severity of complaints, symptoms, or injuries. Again, you know, we're looking at our risk assessments and our priorities. We also want to have proper allocation of technical and financial resources at your disposal, at your company's disposal. We want to listen to the ideas of our workers for making improvements. Again, great way to generate buy-in is to have that process that your workforce and your employees know that they're heard. We need to listen, but we also need to hear what our employees are saying and implement the ideas that they have. As well, we do need to understand that there's going to be difficulties. So we need to address difficulties in implementing various improvements. If there's any way that we can preemptively assume some difficulties, now I want to be careful when I use the word assume, of course, but if there's any way that we can get ahead of some of the difficulties that we might face, again, that change management, we're proactively looking at some barriers we might be able to overcome. Awareness, prevention measures, all of these are going to help apply. As well, we need actual timeframes for making improvements. We can't just say that we're going to improve. What is our plan for actually improving? What is our timeline for improving? We are seeing these injuries happening. We are seeing repetitive strains. Again, let's say we see a significant amount of strain injuries in March. Well, what are we looking at in March to help correct these issues or get ahead of some of the prevention measures that we can apply? So I think it goes without saying that prevention pays off. So taking a proactive approach when addressing repetitive strain injuries can provide significant benefits to your workplace and your bottom line. Effective prevention will allow for fewer lost time injuries. That's our ultimate goal, of course. Increased efficiency, enhanced productivity, and quality management. I think as well, it goes without saying that if we do have an injured workforce, it's going to hurt our productivity. It's going to hurt our quality management. If our productivity slacks, if our quality management hurts, that's going to hurt our bottom line, longer run, developing products for our customers. So when we are looking at these prevention measures, right? Again, I keep talking about discussing with our workforce. So discomfort and pain are going to lead to less productivity, issues with our quality management. I don't like to use the word bad habit. It is negative, of course, but if we can get ahead, for lack of better terms, we can get ahead of our bad habits, if we can correct some procedures before they become issues. One thing that I'm really proud of with construction safety is we do have an initiative to address mental health, not just in construction, but in all industries, with a focus on construction, of course, on our side. I'm not going to talk too much about that topic right now, but one thing that we do address is that tough guy attitude. I've been there. I've worked in industries where you don't talk about it. You leave it at the door. Sometimes we wear our pain like a badge of honor. And what we're trying to break down with our mental health initiative, but as well can definitely be applied to our strain injuries, is talking about it, not hiding the fact that our body's sore, not hiding the fact that we're tired, that this task that we keep performing is actually causing some issues. The unfortunate thing with repetitive strain injuries, as well as musculoskeletal injuries, is they often start invisible. We don't see them. We don't feel them right away. It's the fact that we're doing these repetitive tasks over and over that our body is gradually breaking down. And usually these things start slowly, but by the time they start, we already have an issue. So any way that we can get ahead of these, this is what we're trying to create awareness on. And this is what we're asking everybody to apply into their hazard identification and their control measures. Let's get into some of the fun stuff. So with construction safety, we're always trying to put up new resources, new avenues to help out our members and anybody in any industry. So we do have a new safe lifting poster that can be downloaded and printed at your convenience. We have a toolbox, a template, a safety share template. Admittedly, a lot of the information on this PowerPoint, or on this presentation, has come from this toolbox talk. So a great little document there to print off for yourself as well. And we also have a safe work practice for team lifting that is available. As I mentioned, our communication and our engagement team does a great job getting campaigns up off their feet, get different resources that are available to you. So please always check our website for new resources that are available. Always reach out to us. Nobody here is ever going to turn you down from trying to help you. I can assure you with that. As well, all the other associations across Canada, we're here to help out the construction industry. We're here to help out our members in that. So any resources that any of the associations have available, please reach out to them, get some support if and when you need. As well, I'd like to talk about WCB here in Nova Scotia, so the Workers' Compensation Board in Nova Scotia. So we have www.wcb.ns.ca. Here you can find a musculoskeletal injury prevention guide. Great benefit for any organization. But this will include risk mapping, discomfort survey. I was talking about that a little bit earlier. I really like discomfort surveys. They are a great proactive resource, but also a reactive resource to analyze and look at. So with your discomfort survey, essentially what you're going to look at your task, you're going to look at your discomfort, and you're going to be able to make a root cause connection between those. Of course, we also have workplace inspection checklists, an office ergonomic resource guide. One thing I do see quite often in auditing is sometimes we forget about the office. The construction site, the yard, the shop, we have these critical tasks that are being performed, so we put a lot of focus into there. But we have to look at our office and our administrative staff as well. I would like to mention as well the Center of Research Expertise for the Prevention of Musculoskeletal Disorders, www.msdprevention.com. This website was actually just introduced to me recently, and I really enjoy it. There is like a control kind of process that you can apply. So there's a tab on the website, you open that up, and what it does, it gives you multiple drop-down menus and options to select through. You can select the task, the industry, body parts. There's easily 6 to 8 different selections that you can pick through, and you hit go. And what it does, it will bring up safe work practices, safe job procedures, different controls, different resources available out there to help mitigate some of the issues you might find. And it is based out of Ontario as well. So if you do have the time, I always recommend everyone to check out that website, play around with a little bit. If there are any particular industries or body parts you're concerned about, plug it into the drop-down menus, and you'll be surprised at some of the resources you can find there. As well, I can't not mention Canadian Centre for Occupational Health and Safety, CCOHS, unbelievable resource there. The link that I currently have up on the slide is a direct to some of their posters that they have available for download and for print, specifically about repetitive strain injuries. So again, great resource there. I'll always mention, as I said, reach out to our organization, reach out to any of the safety organizations in any province, any of the workers' compensation boards in the provinces. These resources are here for you, and we're always happy to help and assist any way that we can. And if there's something that we're not able to help to, I assure you we'll get back to you in a timely manner on some ways to do that. And that is going to finish up for my presentation for now. I would like to thank everyone who is attending, who made time out of their day today to sit with us. I'd like to thank Todd and OHS Canada definitely as well for giving us the ability to have this presentation today. So once again, my name is Colin Creaser. I can be reached, I know this is a Nova Scotia line, but I can be reached at 1-902-789-7888. As well, C. Creaser at constructionsafetyns.ca. The bottom left side there, that is the Construction Safety Association Nova Scotia's contact. As well, I have the Workers' Compensation Board of Nova Scotia's contact there on the bottom right side as well. So Todd, I'll just leave that up for a quick second there if anyone would like to take down contact information, but after that, I'll hand it back off to you and help facilitate any questions that we can.
Great, thank you, Colin. Appreciate that. I'll start off just by reading a comment. We've got some nice comments here, just thanking you for your time and sharing your expertise. So always nice to get that feedback from the audience.
My pleasure. Yeah, thank you.
No, for sure. One of the comments here is just people asking if they can get actually a copy of the PowerPoint. So that's something you're willing to share. Can they email you for a copy of that?
Email me for it, please. Yes. In all honesty, I would have to just double check a little bit on the resources that I'm available to share. But for the most part, the information I can definitely share with anybody who's interested. So please shoot me an email and I guarantee you I'll get back to you.
For sure. And just a reminder that you will receive a copy of the recording of this. So if there's anything that you missed or you want to see again, you can simply rewatch the recording as well. So let's get into a couple of questions.
Yeah, please.
We had a few that were kind of focused on the idea of stretching before you start working, including this one. So would 5 minutes of calisthenics prior to work help minimize RSIs? For example, the 5BX set of exercises. That help?
I think for me, what I would always kind of want to say is the biggest concern, what you're doing, you don't want that to become a hazard in on itself. So if it is something that you can apply in a safe manner, I'm going to recommend it. As far as specifics, I would be a little bit more focused on just warming up and loosening up our body a little bit, especially in the colder months, relative to our time frame right now. But essentially, we want to make sure that we're not overexerting ourselves when we're preparing to potentially overexert ourselves. So I'm just going to say, as cliche as it might be, just be careful on any stretching or any pre-work that you are doing, of course.
Good stuff. All right, next question here. Are there any resources that you're aware of that are available on things like balance, primarily around prevention of fall, trip and slip at the workplace?
I'll definitely look into resources. I don't have anything off the top of my head right now, other than called just general awareness. Now, I mean, housekeeping is going to be one of your first lines of defense for slips and trips. I say this sometimes, but you might not have created the problem, but if you don't help a solution to the problem, then you are contributing to it. So you might not have been the one that's dropped that piece of equipment or that material on the floor, but if you're not the one who picks it up, somebody else can trip on it and hurt themselves. So we're not doing everything possible to mitigate some of those slips and trips. As far as resources go, I do apologize. I'll have to get back to you on anything specific there.
No worries, Colin. We like to put you on the spot. So
yeah, give me a couple of low-lying fruit ones here.
sure. Well, you know what, this one may also be outside your area of expertise, but it's an interesting question. It's really more to do with HR.
Okay.
This person's asking, any recommendations on how to incorporate physical demands into the recruitment and selection process? So as you're looking to hire somebody, anything you can do there to make sure that you're finding the right person?
I mean, of course, on the HR side of it, I'm always going to recommend to talk to an HR professional. I have a minimal experience in the HR world, other than invested interest in keeping our workforce safe. For me, a lot of those screening questions are important during the interview process. Now, of course, we're never going to discriminate against anybody who might not be able to perform every single task that's out there. But at the end of the day, there are physical demands to the construction industry. Of course, you want to be careful on some of the specifics that you're getting into or some of the limitations. But at the end of the day, to say this politely as I can, if you're unable to lift 50 pounds, you're unable to lift 50 pounds. So it is important to do those screening questions, but also be respectful about it. And I'm always going to say, double check with an HR professional on some of those question periods and some of the wordage you're using.
For sure. Good advice, Colin. Next one here. Can you give some more detail on the discomfort survey? How do you prevent a complaint session versus actual helpful hazard identification?
Great question. Great question. For me, everything that resources are out there, but what I'm always going to say is when it says insert company name here, insert company name here. So any template you're using, discomfort surveys, there are lots out there. Get them, create them, or not sorry, create them, sorry, but get them and customize them to yourself. So if there are concerns you have about complaint session versus a highlighting areas of concern session, try to customize that discomfort survey to maybe steer away from some of those topics. Really focus in on root issues. That being said, some of these complaints are also valid though. I do appreciate, especially on an HR side, sometimes you turn into the human punching bag, to be honest with you. So complaints are valid. We do have to listen to them. But when it comes to the discomfort survey, try to develop one that's going to highlight specific tasks and the root causes that can be associated with them. And really the best piece of advice I have for you, that if something is turning into more of a complaint session, listen to your employees, listen to your workforce, but just try to keep that conversation rolling. Just try to stay on topic. Thank you. I hear you. I appreciate where you're coming from, but X, Y, Z and that.
Sure. And just a comment here, we had a couple questions come or more comments come in about that HR side of things, talking about making sure that they are true bona fide occupational requirements when you're screening. So just, that speaks to your point, Colin. You want to make sure you talk to your HR team to make sure you avoid any pitfalls, right?
Of course.
Next question. This one touches on that tough guy attitude that you mentioned during your presentation. Any advice on how to approach a worker who is difficult to talk to about the way they're doing the work? This person says there's one person on their team who pushes back on any suggestion on how to work and move in a safe manner.
Okay. Hit them in the family. Talk with the family. That's, to me, one of the most important factors of safety is who you're coming home to. You're coming home to your friends, family, children. This might sound cliche, but one line we use quite often is, would you put your child up there? Scaffolding particularly, right? Or anything. Would you put your wife, your husband, anybody in that situation? More often than not, if it's a health and safety issue, they're going to say no. I do appreciate pushback. Again, we always want to be respectful, but get to know the person. Spend a little bit of time not talking about health and safety, if that's, of course, appropriate in this particular scenario. But take the time to get to know the person. It can be uncomfortable for all parties involved. Sometimes that rough and gruff around the edges, they're a sweetheart inside. You just got to find how to get to that sweetheart part of it. So the thing I'm always going to say is be respectful. At the end of the day, we don't always know what's going on in people's personal lives. I do appreciate the pushback. If there's ways that you can acknowledge that this person is being heard, but as well, there are compliance issues that we have to follow up on. I have a quote. Now, this isn't my quote. I have adopted this from one of my colleagues here at Construction Safety, but I love it, and I think it speaks volumes. And it's, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. So you can go to any work site and just start listing off legislation. Okay, but if the person isn't acknowledging that you were there to help them, you're just speaking legal talk to them at this stage of the game. So we need to encourage our employees that we are here to help. We are maintaining a long work life, longevity. And again, I mean, I don't want to go below the belt, but talk about family. That usually seems to be the big driving factor on getting buy-in for safety. I hope that answers your question there. Again, please feel free to always email me and I'll try to get back to you as best as I can.
Oh, thanks, Colin. These are definitely, some of these are tricky questions, right? This one's sort of in the same vein. It's focused on young workers and new workers to the company.
Yeah.
So the way it's phrased here, they sort of act like they're invincible.
Yeah.
Any suggestions on how we can help convince them that RSIs can affect workers of any age, or that it's going to catch up with them later if they don't do it right?
It is a tough one, because other than just telling them to do it. So one thing that's common knowledge in a safety world is that your highest injury rates are going to be your newest employees who have something to prove or want to show that they're gung-ho and ready to work, and or your older workforce that I've been doing it for 20 years, never fell once, stuff like that. Those are always going to be your hardest markets to reach. On the younger employee side, the invincible side of it, again, I apologize if I'm hitting below the belt a bit here, but show videos. Sometimes graphic videos are hard to watch, and they're hard to watch for a reason, and they hit home. That is definitely, I really appreciate the concern with the younger workers. That is something that every industry deals with, especially construction. Show them real life videos if you're comfortable to do so. I also want to state that very clearly, but there are some graphic videos out there. It will bring the picture home pretty quick. As well, if you do have any safety culture leaders in your organization, any mentors that we can link up with some of the younger workforce, great way to coach and educate our younger employees on health and safety initiatives and that.
Great, thank you, Colin. Next up here, do you advocate any tools to systematically look at primary risk factors? And second part of this, are you suggesting a risk assessment tool to help employers?
Recommending a specific one, no. I'm always going to say do a little bit of research. Don't just grab the first thing you find, and also always customize it to your own industry or your own workforce. But yes, I think it's very important to take a look at our RSI or MSI issues when we are developing a hazard assessment. So it's not just a matter of, is that machine going to hurt us? It's how are we using that machine that can hurt us as well. So a particular tool, I don't have one to recommend for you, but I will always recommend to take a look at the resources that are out there and available, customize them to your own workforce. And if doubt, again, reach out to your local associations or anybody else in the safety industry and get input.
Great, thanks. We're just about out of time. I'm going to squeeze a couple more questions in.
Yeah, please, yeah.
So this one here, you mentioned you were talking during your presentation about some new and interesting kind of PPE equipment technology coming out. Is there anything any new products you've seen that are particularly impressive that you think can make a difference with RSIs that may not be on the market yet or that are on the market?
Nothing that I personally know of, to be honest with you. It's not something that I look into too much currently. I'm not on the procurement side of our equipment here at Construction Safety, so I'm not looking too much into that. Again, I do apologize, not a direct answer for you, but just do your research, just see what's out there. Product catalogs, everybody wants to promote their equipment, promote their stuff. So just reach out to all your sources out there, see what type of products are coming down the line. Of course, sales reps, they're going to know their product. They're going to be able to talk about it. So I think they're going to be the best people to ask.
Good stuff. And then the last one we've got here from the audience. This person here, it's kind of a comment, but also kind of I guess, to get your input on it.
Okay.
A near miss is actually a successful hit, this person says. When will they be called a near incident instead? We need to change the systemic safety culture to include the reality of work. So thoughts on that one, Colin?
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. That's a very good comment. Now I'm thinking about it, I feel like I meant to talk about near misses during the presentation there. So near misses, near hits, near incidences are definitely a big focus for any safety organization. I always promote that it's how you're going to analyze your trends. I know I've used this example earlier, but if you have a significant amount of near misses in January, well, what's going on in January? They have these near misses. I do appreciate the suggestion about the change of language. You have my vote. I don't like the word accident. I prefer incident. I don't like the word miss. I like the near incident. I think you're onto something there. As far as that goes for safety culture, I promise you I'll try to start using that language. After that, it's just getting that buy-in, right? Near misses, near incidences, near hits, they are, I don't want to say lacking for a negative reason there, but they are something that we actively try to promote throughout organizations. And there are lots of different means to help assist that. I saw a company the other day that actually had a QR code at their little kind of emergency station there. Now I am young enough that technology works for me, but I'm old enough that I'm still having a hard time here and there with some of it. So the QR code, I think, is a great accessible means for some of the younger workforces out there as well. So they just take a quick photo of the QR code, it pulls up the incident report, check, send it off. Yeah, sorry, I think I went on a bit of a tangent there. I hope that somewhat answers your question. And again, always feel free to reach out to me. So.
Tangents are good, and a good point about the QR codes. Those are becoming more and more common. Yeah. Throughout, you see them on advertising, you see them everywhere. So I think people are becoming more used to doing that, and they're getting better at accessing that. And to your other point too, just maybe it's because I'm an editor, but I firmly believe the language that we use matters. Yes. So I think that's an important point. So anyway, that does bring us to the end of our session today. So thank you to everyone for joining us. We hope you found it informative, that the insights and best practices that Colin shared are valuable and will be useful to you in your work. So we'd like to extend a special thanks to our sponsor, Avetta, for making this webinar possible and for their commitment to promoting safety and health in the workplace. And then I guess if you've got any further questions or would like to learn more about preventing RSIs in construction, don't hesitate to reach out to Colin. His information's here on the slide still. You can also visit OHS Canada's website at ohscanada.com and also Avetta's website for additional resources. So once again, thanks for joining us. We look forward to continuing this conversation around workplace safety and health. On behalf of OHS Canada, have a safe rest of your day. Thank you, Colin.
Thank you. Bye now.